The golden sun rose slowly over the wheat fields of New Haven, casting long shadows across the peaceful farmland. James Harrison stepped out onto his wooden porch, breathing in the fresh morning air. As the leader of their small world, he loved these quiet moments before the day began. The smell of fresh bread drifted from the bakery down the street, mixing with the sweet scent of blooming flowers in his neighbor's garden. 48,000 people called this planet home. They had built something beautiful here over the past 200 years. Small houses with red roofs lined the main street. Children played in the schoolyard, their laughter echoing across the valley. Farmers drove their trucks toward the fields, ready for another day of honest work. James watched as old Henry Miller guided his horse-drawn cart past the house. Henry was 93 years old and still insisted on doing things the old way. His grandfather had been on the first ship from Earth, back when people still remembered what their home planet looked like. "Morning, James," Henry called out, tipping his worn hat. "Beautiful day for the harvest." "That it is, Henry," James replied, waving back. He loved the simple life they had built here. No politics, no wars, no giant cities full of strangers. Just good people working hard and taking care of each other. Dr. Emily Watson appeared at his side, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. She was a small woman with kind eyes and gray hair that she kept in a neat bun. As their historian, Emily spent her days in the old library, reading ancient books and keeping alive the stories of Earth. "I was reading about London again last night," she said, handing James his coffee. "Can you imagine a city with 10 million people? All those cars and buildings reaching up to the sky?" James shook his head. "Sounds like madness to me. I prefer our way of life." Emily smiled sadly. "Sometimes I wonder if Earth even exists anymore. 237 years since the last message. Maybe something terrible happened to them." The silence from their home world had been complete. One day, regular messages were coming through from Earth and the other colonies. The next day, nothing. The great communication network that connected all the human worlds had simply gone dead. For the first few decades, the colonists had waited, hoping the signals would return. But as years turned into centuries, most people stopped thinking about Earth at all. James was about to reply when Lieutenant Michael Stone burst through the front door of the government building. The young security officer's face was pale with worry, and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool morning air. "Sir," Michael gasped, trying to catch his breath. "We need you in the communication center right now. Something big is happening." James set down his coffee cup, feeling a cold knot form in his stomach. In all his years as colony administrator, he had never seen Michael look so frightened. They hurried through the building to the small communication center in the basement. Sarah Collins, their radio operator, sat at her desk with headphones on, staring at her equipment with wide eyes. "What is it, Sarah?" James asked. "Ships, sir. Big ones. Coming down from orbit right now. They're not answering our calls." James felt the blood drain from his face. No ship had visited their world in over 2 centuries. They had all assumed they were alone in this part of space. "How many ships?" he asked. "At least 20. Maybe more. And sir." Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. "They don't look human." Through the small basement window, James could see people stopping in the street, pointing up at the sky. Dark shapes moved across the blue morning, growing larger by the minute. The peaceful sounds of the town were replaced by worried voices and the sound of running feet. Dr. Watson grabbed James's arm. "What do we do? We don't have any weapons except hunting rifles and farm tools." The first ship landed in the center of town with a sound like thunder. It was sleek and black, shaped like a giant knife. Strange symbols covered its hull, glowing with purple light. The ground shook as more ships landed around the settlement. James ran upstairs and out onto the street. Hundreds of his people had gathered, staring at the alien vessels with fear and wonder. Children clung to their parents' legs. The elderly sat on their porches, too stunned to move. A ramp lowered from the nearest ship with a hiss of escaping air. The creatures that emerged looked like giant lizards walking upright. They wore black armor and carried weapons that hummed with energy. Their yellow eyes scanned the crowd of humans like a farmer examining cattle. The largest alien stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice was translated by a device on its chest. The words came out cold and harsh. "I am Commander Korath of the Reptilian Hegemony. This world now belongs to us. You will follow our orders or you will die." James stepped forward, his legs shaking but his voice steady. "I'm the administrator of this colony. What do you want from us?" Korath looked down at the small human with what might have been amusement. Your planet contains valuable minerals. You will mine them for us. Those who work will eat. Those who refuse will starve. And if we fight? Asked Michael Stone, his hand moving toward the pistol on his belt. Korath pointed one clawed finger at the sky. More ships hung there like dark clouds, weapons pointed down at the helpless town. Then you will all burn. The peaceful morning was over. The quiet life they had built was ending. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, Earth remained silent. The mines were hell on Earth. David Cooper's hands bled as he swung the heavy pickaxe against the rocky wall. His back ached from hours of bending over, digging for the precious metals that the aliens wanted. The air was thick with dust that made him cough and spit black. 3 months had passed since the reptilians took over New Haven. The beautiful farms were now ugly scars in the ground. Giant machines dug deep holes everywhere, destroying the wheat fields and flower gardens that families had tended for generations. David stopped to wipe sweat from his face. Around him, hundreds of other colonists worked in the dim light of the underground tunnels. Their clothes were torn and dirty. Many had lost weight, their faces thin and hollow from the small portions of food the aliens gave them. "Keep working, human," growled a reptilian guard, pointing his energy weapon at David's chest. The aliens' yellow eyes showed no emotion, no care for human suffering. To them, the colonists were just tools to be used until they broke. Margaret Thompson pushed a heavy cart full of rocks past David. She had been the town school teacher, loved by all the children for her kind smile and patient ways. Now her gray hair was covered in dirt, and her gentle hands were cut and bruised from the sharp stones. "How are you holding up, Margaret?" David whispered when the guard moved away. "I dream about my classroom," she replied quietly. "I dream about reading stories to the children and watching them laugh. Sometimes I wake up and forget where I am for a moment." David nodded sadly. They all had dreams like that. Dreams of the life before, when they were free. In the evening, the workers were marched back to the camps. Rows of metal buildings housed the human prisoners. The aliens had built high fences topped with sharp wire around each camp. Guard towers stood at every corner, manned by reptilian soldiers who never seemed to sleep. Commander Korath walked through Camp 7 that night, inspecting his human workforce like a farmer checking his animals. His black armor reflected the harsh lights that turned night into an artificial day. Behind him walked his aide, Lieutenant Vex, carrying a data pad with production numbers. "The humans are weaker than expected," Vex reported. "We are losing 5 to 10 workers each day. They cannot handle the workload." Korath stopped and looked at a group of colonists sitting outside their barracks. An old man was coughing badly, his chest making terrible sounds. A young woman held a baby that cried from hunger. A teenage boy stared at nothing, his eyes empty of hope. "Increase their food by 10%, Korath ordered. "Dead humans cannot mine. We need them alive long enough to finish the extraction." "Yes, Commander. Should we find another world to gather more workers?" Korath shook his head. "These humans have no home world support. No fleet will come to save them. They are alone and forgotten. We can work them until the job is done, then move on to the next world." As the alien commanders walked away, David was busy in the shadows behind the barracks. He had found pieces of their old communication equipment in the ruins of the town. Working by the light of stolen glow sticks, he tried to put together something that could send a message. James Harrison sat nearby, keeping watch. The former colony administrator looked 10 years older than when the aliens arrived. His shoulders were bent from carrying heavy loads in the mines, and a long scar ran across his cheek from a guard's whip. "Do you really think this will work?" James asked quietly. David connected 2 wires and saw a small light flicker on the device. "I don't know. Maybe. I'm trying to boost the signal by using the metal in the fence as an antenna. Even if it works, who would hear it? Earth went silent over 200 years ago." David looked up at the stars visible through the fence. Somewhere out there in the darkness was Earth, the blue world their great-grandparents had left behind. Maybe it was dead. Maybe everyone there had been destroyed by war or disease. But maybe, just maybe, someone was still listening. "I have to try," David said. "I can't just give up and let us all die here." He finished connecting the last wire. The device hummed softly and showed a green light. David had built a transmitter that could send one burst message toward Earth's last known location. He would only get one chance. His fingers shook as he typed the message. "This is New Haven Colony on Kepler 442b. We are enslaved by the reptilian hegemony. 48,000 humans need help. Please, if anyone is listening, remember us." David looked at James one last time. "Should I send it?" James nodded. Do it. Even if no one hears, at least we tried. David pressed the button. The device sent the message racing through space at the speed of light, carrying their desperate plea across the vast emptiness between stars. Then the device went dark, its power exhausted. The two men sat in silence, listening to the sounds of the camp. Guards walked their routes. People coughed in the barracks. Babies cried. In the distance, the mining machines worked through the night, eating away at their world piece by piece. Neither man spoke of hope. Hope was dangerous in a place like this. But deep in their hearts, they wondered if their message would reach someone who remembered that humans lived among the stars. They wondered if Earth remembered them. Above their heads, the message traveled through the cold vacuum of space, carrying the desperate words of the forgotten colony toward a home world that had been silent for over 2 centuries. Admiral Robert Mitchell stood in the command center of Terra Defense Station Alpha, watching the giant screen that showed the galaxy around them. The room was huge, filled with hundreds of officers working at glowing computers. Outside the massive windows, Earth looked like a blue jewel floating in space, but it was no longer the same world that had sent out colony ships centuries ago. The planet below sparkled with cities that reached into the clouds. Space elevators stretched from the surface to orbital stations where millions of people lived and worked. Shipyards the size of small moons built vessels that would have seemed like magic to the early colonists. But most of the galaxy did not know this. As far as other species were concerned, humanity was extinct. The old star maps marked human space as dead civilization or failed expansion. This lie had been carefully maintained for over 2 centuries. Admiral Mitchell was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment, just like his father and grandfather before him. The Mitchell family had served in the Deep Space Recovery Division for 5 generations, all waiting for the day when Earth's lost children would call for help. Admiral, called Lieutenant Lisa Parker from her station. She was young, maybe 25, with bright red hair pulled back in a military bun. Her fingers moved quickly over her keyboard as data flowed across her screens. What is it, Parker? Mitchell asked, walking over to her station. Priority signal from Deep Space Relay Station 14. It's, sir, I think you need to hear this. Parker pressed a button, and David Cooper's voice filled the command center. The message was weak and full of static, but every word was clear. This is New Haven Colony on Kepler 442b. We are enslaved by the reptilian hegemony. 48,000 humans need help. Please, if anyone is listening, remember us. The entire command center fell silent. Hundreds of officers stopped their work and turned to listen. Some had tears in their eyes. They all knew what this meant. Admiral Mitchell closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of 2 centuries pressing down on him. When he opened them again, his voice was steady and strong. Signal all department heads. Operation Homecoming is now active. This is not a drill. The command center exploded into action. Alarms began ringing throughout the station. Red lights flashed in every corridor. Officers ran to their battle stations. In shipyards around Earth, massive vessels that had waited in the shadows began powering up their engines. Colonel William Hayes rushed into the command center, still putting on his uniform jacket. He commanded the Human Expeditionary Marines, the most elite fighting force in human space. His men were enhanced soldiers, stronger and faster than normal humans, trained for one purpose, to rescue the lost colonies. Sir, what's our target? Hayes asked. Kepler 442b. New Haven Colony. 48,000 civilians enslaved by reptilian forces. Mitchell handed him a data pad with all the information they had. Hayes read quickly, his jaw tightening with anger. How long to get there? 3 weeks at maximum speed. How long do you need to prepare your Marines? They've been ready their whole lives, sir. Just give us the ships. Across human space, hidden bases began opening like flowers in the morning sun. On Mars, massive doors slid apart to reveal underground shipyards where Earth's true fleet waited. Near Jupiter, weapon platforms disguised as mining stations powered up their real systems. In the asteroid belt, supply depots that looked like ordinary rocks began broadcasting military codes. The human defense network had been built in secret over 2 centuries. While the galaxy thought humanity was dead, Earth had been preparing for war. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier existed for one reason: to find their scattered children among the stars and bring them home. Captain Jennifer Blake received her orders aboard the UES Vengeance, a battleship so advanced it could destroy entire fleets by itself. Her crew was ready within hours. They had trained for this their entire careers. Navigation, Plot a course for Kepler 442b, she ordered. Maximum speed. Aye, Captain. Quantum fold drive is ready. We can be there in 18 days. Similar scenes played out on dozens of ships throughout human space. The UES Retribution, flagship of Admiral Mitchell himself. The UES Thunder, carrying Colonel Hayes and his Marines. The UES Justice, loaded with medical supplies for the rescued colonists. Ship after ship emerged from hiding places that had kept them secret for generations. Dr. Emma Watson, Earth's leading expert on colonial history, studied the files on New Haven Colony in her laboratory. Her job was to understand what the colonists had been through, what they would need when the rescue came. They've been alone for over 200 years, she told her assistant. They probably think we abandoned them. They have no idea what we've become. What have we become, Doctor? Emma looked out the window at Earth's orbital defense grid, weapons capable of destroying planets hanging in space like deadly flowers. We've become what we needed to be. We've become strong enough to protect our own. The rescue fleet gathered near Pluto, hidden behind the dwarf planet where enemy sensors couldn't detect them. 50 ships of the line, each one more powerful than anything the reptilian hegemony had ever seen. Troop transports carrying enhanced marines. Medical ships to treat the rescued colonists. Supply vessels loaded with food, medicine, and everything needed to rebuild a shattered world. Admiral Mitchell stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching his fleet prepare for quantum fold. In 3 weeks, they would arrive at Kepler 442b. The reptilian hegemony had no idea what was coming for them. All ships report ready, Admiral, reported his communications officer. Mitchell nodded. Send the message to Earth Command. Tell them we're going to bring our people home. The fleet jumped into quantum fold space, carrying Earth's promise across the galaxy: humanity never abandons its own. Commander Korath sat in his command ship high above New Haven, studying the daily mining reports. The humans were producing less ore each week as their bodies grew weaker, but there was still enough valuable metal in the planet's crust to make the operation profitable. In another year, maybe 2, they would strip everything worth taking and move on to the next world. His communications officer, a young reptilian named Zek, suddenly looked up from his station with confusion on his scaled face. Commander, I'm getting strange readings from our long-range sensors. What kind of readings? Korath asked, not looking up from his reports. Gravitational distortions at the edge of the system. Something big is coming through fold space, but I can't identify what it is. Korath finally raised his head. Nothing had visited this system in the 3 months since they had conquered it. How big? Zek's claws clicked nervously on his keyboard as he tried to make sense of the data. Very big, sir. Multiple contacts. At least 50 separate signatures. Before Korath could respond, his tactical officer screamed a warning. Commander! Our orbital defense platforms are gone. Gone? What do you mean gone? I mean they're not there anymore, sir. All 12 platforms just disappeared. No explosions, no debris. They're simply not there. Korath felt ice run through his veins. He rushed to the main viewing screen just as the first human ships emerged from quantum fold space. They appeared like ghosts materializing from nothing, sleek and deadly, their hulls black as the space between stars. The ships were unlike anything in Korath's experience. They moved with impossible grace for their size, each one easily 3 times larger than his flagship. Strange energy surrounded them, making his sensors malfunction whenever they tried to get a clear reading. All ships, battle stations. Korath ordered. Launch fighters and prepare to engage. His fleet of 25 vessels moved to intercept the unknown ships. Reptilian fighters swarmed out of their carriers like angry insects. Energy weapons charged up, ready to destroy whatever dared to threaten the hegemony's conquest. Admiral Mitchell stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the enemy fleet approach. His gray hair was now hidden under a combat helmet, and his calm eyes studied the tactical display with centuries of human military knowledge behind them. Admiral, enemy fleet is moving to intercept, reported his tactical officer. Should we try to communicate with them? Mitchell's voice was cold as winter space. No. They had their chance to leave peacefully when they decided not to enslave our people. All ships, commence liberation protocol. No survivors among the occupying forces. The human fleet opened fire. The weapons that emerged from the Earth ships were beyond anything the galaxy had seen. Beams of pure energy that could cut through any armor. Missiles that curved through space like living things, seeking their targets with deadly intelligence. The reptilian fighters simply vanished as the human defensive systems activated, swatting them from space like flies. Korath watched in horror as half his fleet disappeared in the first 30 seconds of battle. His remaining ships fired desperately, their energy weapons splashing uselessly against the human shields. "Retreat!" he screamed. "All ships retreat to the planet's surface." But there was nowhere to run. The human ships surrounded his fleet with mathematical precision, their weapons methodically destroying each vessel. In less than 10 minutes, only Korath's flagship remained, and it was badly damaged. On the planet's surface, the sky began to light up with falling stars. But these were not meteors. They were human drop pods, carrying Earth's elite marines to the surface like hammers of judgment. Captain William Hayes felt his pod shake as it punched through the atmosphere. Inside his power armor, he was more machine than man. Enhanced muscles gave him the strength of 10 normal humans. Built-in computers helped him see through smoke and darkness. Weapon systems connected directly to his nervous system made him a walking weapon of war. "All Marines, remember the mission," Hayes spoke into his helmet radio. "Save every human civilian. Kill every alien soldier. Show them what happens when someone enslaves our people." His pod slammed into the ground outside Camp 7 with enough force to create a small crater. The armored door exploded outward, and Hayes stepped into the alien world like an avenging angel. Margaret Thompson was carrying water to sick prisoners when the sky began falling. She looked up to see hundreds of metal objects streaking down like shooting stars, each one followed by a trail of fire. The first pod landed so close she felt the ground shake under her feet. She watched in amazement as the metal shell split open and a figure in gleaming armor stepped out. The figure was clearly human in shape, but larger and more powerful than any person she had ever seen. The armored warrior looked directly at her through a glowing helmet visor. When he spoke, his voice was kind despite being electronically enhanced. "Are you injured? Can you walk?" Margaret could only stare. After months of alien brutality, after being treated like an animal, here was a human being asking about her welfare. Who are you?" she whispered. The Marine's helmet retracted, revealing a young man's face with determined eyes and a gentle smile. "Captain Hayes, Human Expeditionary Marines. Earth Defense Force. We're here to take you home." Around the camp, more pods were landing. Marines in power armor moved through the prisoner barracks with deadly efficiency. Reptilian guards who tried to fight were cut down instantly. Those who tried to surrender found no mercy. David Cooper crawled out of his hiding place to see armored humans freeing prisoners and destroying alien equipment. One Marine helped him to his feet with a metal hand that was surprisingly gentle. "Off?" David asked, hardly daring to believe it. "Yes, sir. Earth remembers. We never forgot you." Commander Korath's damaged flagship limped through space, desperately sending distress calls to the main hegemony fleet. His bridge was filled with smoke and sparking electronics. Half his crew was dead, and the other half worked frantically to keep the ship running. "Status report," he barked at his surviving officers. "All ground forces lost, sir," reported his communications officer, his scales pale with fear. "Every camp has been overrun. The humans, they're not like any species we've encountered before." Through the main viewing screen, Korath could see the human ships hanging in orbit like deadly predators. They had stopped firing, but their weapons remained trained on his vessel. It was clear they could destroy him at any moment. "Sir," called his sensor operator. Multiple fold space signatures detected. "It's Admiral Thrax's reinforcement fleet." Korath felt a wave of relief wash over him. Admiral Thrax commanded the hegemony's third battle fleet, over 100 ships including 3 massive dreadnoughts. Surely even these mysterious humans could not stand against such a force. The reptilian reinforcement fleet emerged from fold space in perfect battle formation. Admiral Thrax's flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds, was a kilometer-long monster bristling with enough weapons to crack planets. Around it, cruisers and destroyers took up attack positions. Captain Jennifer Blake stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, watching the enemy fleet deploy. Her ship was beautiful and deadly, its hull gleaming white with blue energy patterns running along its sides. She had waited her entire career for this moment. "Enemy fleet is taking attack positions," reported her tactical officer. 112 vessels, including heavy battleships. Blake activated her communication system and sent a message to the reptilian flagship. "This is Captain Blake of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. You have threatened our people. You have enslaved our colonists. You have exactly 30 seconds to surrender before we demonstrate why that was a mistake." Admiral Thrax laughed when he heard the transmission. His bridge crew joined in, their hissing voices filling the command center with mocking sounds. "One human ship threatens my entire fleet," Thrak said to his officers. "These mammals have lost their minds. All ships, open fire. Destroy them completely." The reptilian fleet unleashed everything they had. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and fusion missiles streaked through space toward the human ships. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The human fleet's defensive systems activated. The incoming weapons simply vanished, absorbed by energy fields that the reptilians had never seen before. Not a single human ship was even scratched. "Impossible," whispered Admiral Thrak. Captain Blake's voice came over the communication system again, calm and cold. 30 seconds are up. You chose poorly." The human ships opened fire. What happened next would be remembered in galactic history as the Battle of New Haven. The human weapons were beyond anything the reptilian hegemony had ever faced. Beams of pure energy that could cut battleships in half. Missiles that moved faster than light and struck with the force of small suns. Defensive systems that made their ships untouchable. The reptilian fleet, which had conquered dozens of worlds, was completely destroyed in 17 minutes. Admiral Thrak's flagship exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the night sky of New Haven. Only Commander Koratha's damaged ship remained, kept alive as a witness. On the planet's surface, James Harrison stood in the ruins of what had been Camp 7. Around him, human Marines were helping the freed colonists, giving them food, medicine, and blankets. Medical ships had landed to treat the sick and wounded. Admiral Mitchell walked through the camp, his uniform clean and pressed despite the battle they had just won. He stopped in front of James and extended his hand. "Colony Administrator Harrison? I'm Admiral Mitchell, Human Defense Force. On behalf of Earth and all her children, I apologize for taking so long to find you." James took the offered hand, tears streaming down his dirty face. "Off. Earth really remembered us." "Every single one of you," Mitchell replied. "We've been searching for our lost colonies for over 2 centuries. The Great Silence wasn't abandonment. It was preparation. We had to become strong enough to protect our people." Dr. Emily Watson approached them, supported by a Marine medic. Her legs were weak from months of poor food and hard labor, but her eyes were bright with joy. "Admiral, what happened to Earth? What did you become during the silence?" Mitchell looked up at the stars, where human ships hung like guardian angels. "We became what we needed to be, Doctor. We became a civilization that never gives up on its own." Around them, the work of liberation continued. Marines helped elderly colonists into medical shuttles. Engineers began repairing the damaged buildings. Supply ships landed with food, clothing, and everything needed to rebuild their shattered world. David Cooper sat on a medical bed, his hands finally clean and bandaged. A young Marine sat beside him, explaining what Earth had become during the centuries of silence. "We built hidden fleets, sir. Secret bases. New technologies. We never stopped growing, never stopped preparing for the day when we'd hear from the colonies again." "How many of us are out there?" David asked. "How many colonies did Earth send out?" The Marine smiled. "Hundreds, sir. And we're going to find every single one." Margaret Thompson held a real book for the first time in months. A human librarian had brought it from one of the ships, along with thousands of others to rebuild their destroyed library. "The children," she said to the librarian. "They need to know about Earth, about where we came from." "They will," the librarian promised. "We've brought teachers, books, and everything needed to reconnect you with your heritage." As night fell over New Haven, the colonists gathered in the main square. Admiral Mitchell stood before them, his voice carrying to every corner of the crowd. "You are no longer alone," he said. "You are part of the Human Federation now. And the Federation protects its own." Above them, the stars seemed brighter than they had in centuries. Earth had remembered. Earth had come for them. And across the galaxy, the message was spreading: humanity was not extinct. They had simply been waiting for someone to threaten their family. When that day came, they descended without warning.